I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby here with Ali Abbasi, the writer and director of Holy Spider, Denmark's entry for Best International Film at the 95th Academy Awards. Ali, this film is based on the true story of a serial killer named Saeed Hinai, who targeted sex workers in Iran and killed 16 women between 2000 and 2001. What made you want to write and ultimately direct a film about this man?
Thanks for having us on, Denton. This is a multi-layered, complex story. You know, on the superficial level, you're dealing with someone who killed 16 people in a year. You know, that's sort of like the scope of it alone is really, you know, remarkable and scary and you know, in a strange way also fascinating. You know, it's like, how can you be a human being taking so many other human beings' lives? That's like the sort of the banal core of it. Then there is the whole socio-political aspect around it. This being set in Iran, in a very religious city of Mashhad, second largest city in Iran, and you know, this sort of religious conservatism meets suppressed sexuality. Also, the fact that in this city, which is supposed to be a holy city, there's widespread prostitution. And, you know, it's like those are the contradictions that are in the city, which represent the contradictions in the bigger Iranian context. And, you know, added to all this is like this whole backstory of the actual guy, you know, which this story is based on, who was a war veteran of Iran-Iraq war in the 80s and comes back and, you know, with a sort of what I call a Travis Bickle syndrome. You know, he knows that he wants to be someone. He knows he wants to do something. He doesn't know why, and has this sort of, you know, violent, you know, tendency that needs to like, you know, aim at someone or something. So, you know, like there are many different layers and levels of storytelling in this story, and ultimately, for me, this is a film noir that, you know, it not only addresses the themes of, you know, the religious conservatism and the suppressed sexuality and misogyny, an important one, but also it's an experience or a dive into the underbelly of Iranian society. So as such, I don't see this as a true crime movie, but more as a sort of a subjective point of view.
One of the most interesting things about Saeed is we see this side of him that's a family man. He prays daily. I mean, there's two sides of him here. And then he pretty much says he's doing God's work when he's out there killing these prostitutes. Do you think he believes that in his own mind, or is that an excuse for him to just do what he wants?
I mean, there are two ways of looking at it. Is this guy a psychopath with a religious patina, you know, who really enjoys killings and tries to sort of justify it by, getting into the whole religious, or trying to at least to motivate it in a religious way? Or is he really a religious, devout person that is on the path of, like, you know, cleansing the city? And, you know, as in the actual case, what we try to do is not to depict him as being crazy and being psycho.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, like, you know, he is a, you know, father and a husband, and, you know, is loved by his family and his neighbors. So it's not that kind of crazy, you know, it's not like insane. But of course, if you go and do such a thing, you can't be a normal person. And, you know, this has been something we talked about and we tried to research. I think the closest I came is a bit unsatisfactory, is a little bit of both, really.
Yeah.
You know, I think he was religiously, you know, very conservative, was devout. He really meant some of it. But I also feel that he was hooked on killing people after the first and the second and whatever. It was like, and that's what he said in you know, in the actual case. He said in an interview that he could not stop killing people because he got like addicted to the kick. So it is this interplay of both of these aspects, I think.
Zara Amir Ibrahimi plays Rahimi, and she's a fictional character in the film, but she's this journalist that we see, and she sort of leads us through the story. Why did you choose to add that character, and what does she represent for you in the film?
I mean, just to explain, they are all fictional.
Yeah.
And the character of Said is closer to the actual Said in like the real case. The character of Rahimi has also a base in reality. There was a journalist in the real case who followed the case, and she investigated it, and she wrote about it, and she was at the trial, and then of course she didn't go undercover. So there are differences, but still there it's based on that person. And I think that when we developed the story, and it took us a long time, almost I would say 15 years from the moment we thought about it until it really came out of the movie. We went through different iterations of serial killer story, and like how and why he was killing these women. But at some point we also felt like this story has been told so many times. It's the story of a man who is creatively killing all women, and the real interesting aspect of it maybe lies in the context around it. Maybe it's not a story of a serial killer, but a story of a serial killer society. And we try to sort of balance the story of Said with the story of Rahimi to have that different points of views, to have that different aspects of the story, but also to connect the dots with the theme of the movie, the misogyny against women. I think it's really important to see her bump her head against this man-dominated structure in smalls and big ways, because misogyny is not only, you're not being like told to put on a headscarf and doing this like obvious stuff, but it's also stuff like, oh, you have to sit in this specific place, you have to behave in a specific way, so that was sort of, it made sense to split it between these two characters.
And Zara's been getting rave reviews for her performance. I mean, she's exploding. Can you talk? I read somewhere, maybe you can clear this up, that she wasn't even originally going to be in the movie. Can you talk about casting her and what impressed you the most about have her leading this film?
I mean, Zara, to start with, was my casting director, and we worked. The casting of this movie took 3 years, I think. So we had a lot of time talking about the different characters, and we auditioned many people inside Iran, outside Iran. We had an actress who was supposed to come and do the part. She came to Jordan where we were shooting, and she got cold feet in the middle of, like, I think a week before we start shooting, for reasons that because doing this part would be a risk to anybody's career coming from Iran. In the Iranian context, like doing a scene without a headscarf in a movie would end people's careers, as strange as it sounds. So I understand that, but then I was left with no actress and no lead, and a week before the shoot. And then we start talking about like how we're gonna approach this. I'm looking at the tapes, and I remembered that we had Zara also on tape when she was reading with for the role of against people for role of other journalists. So she was sort of like being there helping out. And we looked at those tapes, and I was like, okay, maybe I need to see the character differently. Maybe I need to see, like, just a mental exercise, how would it be if she was played by Zara, and sort of fit the character to her. And I think something interesting happened because from the beginning, I was thinking that the character is a naive, much younger journalist, just like straight out of journalistic school in a way. And she wants to prove herself. And that's also why she takes like foolish risks. And with Zara came another gravitas and another sort of life experience. Also, she has a very difficult background, being in Iran. She had to leave in Iran because of her personal problems. They couldn't be able to work there, and had been in exile in Europe for a long time. and all that I think added to the sort of the weight of the character, and it became another person. I mean, now that I'm talking to you, like it would be for me impossible to imagine a different person now.
How about Mehdi Bejestani, who plays Saeed? What were you looking for when you're casting him? And is that a risk for him to play this character?
It definitely is. I mean, I think it would be dangerous for him to go back right now. So we're keeping him in Europe, and we're monitoring the situation. But I mean, he took a huge risk doing the movie. Again, not only doing something that, the story that authorities would not approve of and are like outright hostile to, but also doing like explicit scenes like that is also like it's so much outside of the taboos of Iranian cinema. I don't even know what the consequences would be for him, but I just don't want to know.
Yeah.
In a way, he, I think, it's really difficult for me to see any other person, sort of coming close to Mehdi in terms of interpreting this, and because Mehdi he's an accomplished actor. He comes from that region in Iran. He has the right accent, and he knows the mentality. He also comes from a working class background, so he's been in construction. He's ridden those flimsy motorbikes. So that is sort of a life experience he has, and it's difficult. It's almost like a miracle that you actually find this person who is excellent on all counts, also wants to take the chance with you. And I think what he brought to the movie and to the character is a very deep authenticity. And so you don't feel like this is an actor doing a part and of a psycho. You feel like this is a family guy who is in an enigmatic way is killing people. And that was, for me, that was exactly what the enigma was: a normal person doing abnormal things. And I think Mehdi really nailed that.
You mentioned that the filming took place in Jordan. Could you have filmed it in Iran? Or tell us a little bit about the filming process and how you got that reality to the screen.
I mean, it was really important for me to make something that is accurate and authentic, because I think there is a long history of misrepresentation of Middle East and Iran outside of Iran. Hollywood productions, but also like diaspora productions that are using people with the wrong accent, shooting in unbelievable locations and don't have attention to details. So that was really, as in someone who is born and raised in Iran, I felt that I have a responsibility to set records straight. I think that I did try to, we did try to shoot this in Iran, maybe naively so. And obviously the authorities weren't happy about it, so we didn't get to do that. Then we went to Turkey, tried to do the same thing, set shop and try to find locations, worked there for almost half a year, and then got kicked out of Turkey because Iranians pressured them. And that's why we, in the end, ended up in Jordan, because Jordan, not having good relations with Iran, they would have a different approach to this. And, I think for us, Jordan, Amman, and the area around where we mostly used, it was surprisingly similar. It is like urban structure and the way it looked to some places in Iran. And of course, I think that like any other project, it's one thing to find the locations and to find the people and find the cars. Is another thing to pay attention to the details. And I think that's really where it makes, the differences are being made, because, we were having a bunch of Iranians on set, including myself, and we were monitoring things all the time. And I'm like, okay, that flag, that wouldn't look right in Iran. So our approach was, whatever that looks wrong, we take it out or we change it and we keep the rest, instead of like saying the dollhouse approach where like we recreate the reality. And I think in the end that worked really well, because you feel that it's a coherent reality and it's not made up of different small parts. And I think that is also equally important.
you grew up in Iran, you mentioned, and I'm just curious to know what movies were you watching? What inspired you to become a filmmaker? Because look, you've come now this far, and now you're, this submission to potentially be nominated for an Oscar. So, what were you watching? American films, Iranian films? What is that? What is that like as a kid growing up?
I haven't, when I was growing up in Iran, I wasn't that interested in cinema, to be honest, because I come from a writing background, and I was part of a literary circle in Iran, and I was very young and snobbish, and I thought that cinema is for the masses and literature is the true art, and then I saw a few movies that really changed my mind. I remember seeing La Strada, Federico Fellini's movie, and that really changed my mind about the capacity of movie to tell a story that, a kind of poetry that is very difficult to grasp in words and on page, and funny enough, like there weren't that many movies available, the kind that I wanted. So instead of getting to see a lot of those movies, I read their scripts, because like there was this like publication that, for a strange reason, published a lot of like famous movies script, like from Godard's movies to Ingmar Bergman, and Stanley Kubrick. And so I read a lot of those scripts, not having access to the movies actually before it. And that was also an interesting. I remember I read a lot of Bergman scripts, and then when I came out of Iran, I went actually to Sweden to study. And at the time, there was a big retrospective of Bergman. And when I saw the movies, they were so different from the script, even if they followed the script. So all that was really interesting. But I think for me, the movie making process, because I come from a writing background, is maybe less actually about storytelling, because I still think that sort of storytelling is best in literature, than about sensuality or what I call it experience, subjective experience of the world. And that is what I try to accomplish as a filmmaker. I think that is more important than an exciting plot.
Wow. Well, Ali, congratulations on this film. It's a tense thriller, and it really says a lot about society in general and speaks to much more than Iran. It's really something the whole world should see. Congratulations on capturing all this well-deserved attention, and good luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you, and I appreciate it.